Hi, welcome to another video on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. So in this video, I want to go through three different themes, three different pieces of content / news that I want to dissect. We'll start off with Sam Walsh. It has been reported that he will not be playing in Thursday's practice match against the Geelong Football Club due to some back soreness. Now, we understood that last Monday he trained pretty heavily. We knew that he didn't train on Wednesday. He did a lighter session indoors. Seems to be a bit precautionary. And gotta say, maybe it's just because we've been in such a state of peace and we've been in such a state of, I don't know, just a state where there hasn't been much rumor mongering or, the thirst to be first or anything like that. And I think somewhere along the line, in particular with this Sam Walsh news, we or some of us forgot that Sam Walsh will be on a modified program for the rest of his career. That's what's going to happen. He had back surgery last year, so it's not new news. I just find it fascinating. It's probably a nice window into what makes the Carlton Football Club so unique. There are only a few clubs who could have such a piece of news, such a simple piece of news as star player doesn't play in first practice match, get the attention that this has. And I just think we just need to go back to 12 months ago when he had back surgery. Remember, he had back surgery, and that basically means that for the rest of his career, we just need to be a little bit more careful with the load management with him. We know he trains super hard. We know he's done most, if not all, of the preseason, and having a session off 16 days out from the first bounce of the first game of the season probably aligns with the fact that we need to have a modified career with Sam Walsh, because we know that we just need him at the pointy end of the season. So I thought it was a little interesting that we had maybe forgotten what happened last year. Back surgery, very, very serious thing to be having. So that was the first thing. The second was Andrew Russell. It's funny that I'm talking about Andrew Russell after talking about some injury news, but I actually listened to Andrew Russell on Dylan Friends, and I think it's one of two pieces of content that I'm going to recommend that you go and watch. And I think hearing Russell talk, it's the second time he's been on the podcast with Dill. Talks very openly about his career, the mistakes he's made, the football program, the body, how it works, the functions. There's so many bits of information in there that apply not only to professional athletes but to everyday people. And he eventually got to the Carlton side of things, and he pinpointed a few names that were impressing. He did highlight Elijah Hollands as being someone who is doing things that are really, really impressing him, and Jesse Motlop as well, as having done the bulk of the preseason and starting to show. And he made a very peculiar comment when he was talking about footy, and he said that generally speaking, after your fourth preseason, between your second and your fourth preseason, players generally show you 95% of what they are going to be as footballers. So that was a really interesting comment. Just the way he said it with so much conviction, I thought was really interesting. And I think having listened to it and having listened to part two now, I think we've gone on a journey where, as Carlton supporters, we blamed him for a lot of injuries that had happened with the club. And for some reason, that same energy hasn't been turned around when things started going well. Like, why hasn't he been given as much credit as what he had was criticism for, getting the program to where it's at? Also, we're talking about a very, very high level operator within the space. Lots of experience over lots of successful programs. And I felt personally that we'd missed appreciating him for what he is at the club. And I think when he leaves, we will appreciate him more. Unfortunately, I think that's sometimes the way it goes. You don't appreciate what you've got until it's gone. So I don't know. I came away from that interview feeling a lot more excited about the strength and conditioning program, about the high performance program, and really just about the caliber of people that we have at the footy club, and just getting another bit of insight into Russell. He spoke really openly about the passion of the fans And I thought that was important, especially, given we're about to enter a season. Like, there's a real acknowledgement from all stakeholders within the football club as to what the competitive advantage is. And it's a really common theme. It is the passion of the fans. And then the third piece of content, I actually found this just this morning. I was just scrolling on YouTube. I found a video, it was a Zoom interview on a YouTube channel with Leigh, Farnell and Brian Cook. This came out 4 months ago, so obviously at the end of season 2023. It's an hour long. I got really nerdy. I took so many notes. I don't know if you could say so many notes from this episode. I mean, Brian Cook is obviously at Carlton, but I think even before that, we looked at Brian Cook as someone who, to learn off, when it comes to business and organizations and leading. And I just think the dialogue he and Leigh had was so open about the Carlton Football Club that I think anyone who's got any questions around the leadership of the club or how it works or what our mission is or what we're trying to achieve, go and watch it before you form any opinion on what is actually happening at the club. I would say you have to watch this video. I see generally, we talk a lot about the club and what's happening, and I find a lot of opinion that I see sometimes lacks evidence. And I think until you have done the research, it can be really interesting to give an opinion based just purely on gut feel. I think instinct plays a part in certain aspects, but I think in the context of this interview, I don't think I've listened to a more open dialogue between a CEO and anyone from the Carlton Football Club as what I have this. And to be honest, I watched it, I just finished watching it, and I literally walked straight into the studio to start filming this video. Such was the impact that it had. So I highly recommend you watch it. I will put a link to the video in the description below. Where do you begin? I mean, if I could summarize what I've just watched and the things that, rang true to me, I think the higher up you get in an organization and the more successful you get in an organization, the more simple things seem to be communicated. And I think that's what separates the good from the great. Brian Cook is somebody that has a really good ability seemingly to explain what seems to be complex in a really simple way. And that way a lot of people can understand. It was really interesting to hear him talk about the values, and particularly with the club, going from 16 subcommittees to 5, going from a position where directors were sometimes in these departments, and because of the nature of their directorship became leaders of these departments, and then the heads of these departments didn't really feel empowered to lead, and so changing the actual structure of the management styles and the teams within the football club and how that took effect. And the question was asked, like, what was the secret to the turnaround? And ultimately the answer was, I don't know. But I think the real answer is what he said. He just said, you got to stick with your process. You got to stick with your plan. And that was ultimately what it was. They knew that the players still respected the coaches. They knew that there was total buy-in on the inside. They knew that the relationships were still there. It was just about seeing it through. And I think that there's something to be said about that. And it's probably why we've seen extensions for Michael Voss and extensions for Brian Cook and potentially Luke Sayers as well. I think it can be really easy to get caught up in the wins and losses and, they only got extended because we won X amount of games in the second half of 2023. Whereas I look at it a little differently. I think the conduct in which they all displayed during the poor times was actually the most impressive part, because a lot of people would have folded. A lot of people would have changed who they were, and you would have seen them crumble. And I think the test of the Carlton Football Club and what can happen when things don't go our way on the field, I think that is ultimately the reason why we have seen the extensions for the people that we have. And yeah, it was a fascinating listen. He even talked really openly about, his personal feeling towards his own success. I think most people, when they talk about Brian Cook, talk about how successful he is as a businessman and as a CEO. And, at the end of the day, what does it matter if you don't have success with your family? And that was a really raw, honest part of the conversation towards the end, which really hit me. So highly recommend that you go and watch that. I'll put the link to that interview in the description below. And yeah, take a look and come back to me and let me know what you think. And stop panicking about Sam Walsh. He's going to be fine, mate. He's going to be fine. There's no need to panic. Just relax. Did we not learn anything from last year? Anyway, go Blues.